Hi, Haley.
Hello, Brian. We're back after a long time again.
I know, I miss you.
I missed you too. I feel like I miss all my people.
Yeah. Yeah,
Life is getting in the way of me and my people.
I had coffee this morning with a guy who talked about wanting kind of like a commune experience with their friends. That there was a tight-knit group, each one had their own skill, and I think he was even thinking more about sharing, a common space and having your individual homes. But those are your people. And I said, yep, that's great. But our people are also at the grocery store. So we have to make sure that we remember that um, loving kindness is required everywhere
It's
uh,
inclusive.
because everyone's our people. I
Hmm.
got, Haley, I got a letter from a guy a few days ago who had been scammed. Now, scamming is something that has happened to millions of people worldwide. It happens every day. It happens several times a day, sometimes to the same person. An attempt to get from you something that you weren't planning on giving, and once you gave it, you felt shame because you realized that you had been scammed. And this guy felt a lot of embarrassment and shame as if he was stupid. And people would ask him, well, how could you do that? Why would you do that?
Hmm.
And that worsened it. But I've been scammed. I don't know if you've been scammed, but I posted about it and I got dozens of people who talked about being scammed. You know, uh, we were scammed by best friends. Some people are scammed by people in prison or people in another country. This guy was scammed by somebody on the internet, who they pledge love, they pledge
Hmm.
attraction, and they get you hooked because you're lonely, you're single, right? And you're older probably, and they hook you because you're so hungry for affection and meaning and comfort, and then you realize uh, they start asking for money, and initially you give it, and then after a while you think, what? This is crazy. The story is getting crazier. I'm not going to give it anymore. And the relationship ends because that's all the
Hmm.
person wanted was your
Hmm.
money. And so you're left brokenhearted, because you really thought that this person was going to be your boyfriend or girlfriend. And you can't believe that you fell for it. And you can't believe that being a smart person, uh, that you were, quote, dumb enough to fall for it. And that's what your friends often say to you. Well, how could you have done that? That
Hmm.
seems so stupid. That's not like you. Uh, and extending even further, if we go to the most extreme examples of, the woman who's been abused, well, why were you wearing that outfit on the corner?
Hmm.
Why were you in that neighborhood? It doesn't make any sense. You were using bad judgment. And we shame the victim. And, one of the things that I am writing or wrote about is that shame is a wasted feeling. I mean, unless you've really done something wrong that you should feel ashamed of. The scammer should feel ashamed, but not the person who was scammed.
Hmm.
The rapist should feel shame, but not the woman who was abused, who was sexually abused. And we need to talk about this because people don't talk about being scammed because they're embarrassed. And my advice is you got to let go and move on. You know, it's hard as hell. We lost all of our savings to our friends, but if we stayed back there and just spun our wheels about it, the last several years would have been painful,
Hmm.
and we would have told our story over and over and over again to people. And our identity becomes people who were scammed, right? Or a person who was raped or a person who was whatever, right?
Hmm.
So what do you think about that?
I think that when we talk about trauma is sort of how we generally view trauma right now is very much based on the event. So if we're talking about scamming, we think the trauma is that person was scammed, but the trauma really is the shame that is carried after the event.
Yeah.
And it's the stories and it's the stigma after the event that creates all of the trauma and creates all of the stress and dis-ease. And I think it's, shame and resentment are probably some of the most relentless and dangerous sentiments, feelings, experiences, because they're so heavy, they're so thick. Like once you're in shame or once you're in resentment, it's really hard to climb out. It's really hard to kind of get to that high perspective where you're like, all right, let me separate this, let me let go of it. It's not helping me at all. It's just a story that I keep telling myself. And usually that story just gets more and more embellished every time we tell it. And every time we see somebody's reaction to that story, then it just becomes a bigger story. So I think it's very important to speak about it. I think it's very important to speak about what really is the dangerous or the part of our lives that is truly impacted. Is it the event, or is it the story and the shame and the resentment after the event that really is the problem?
We think less of ourselves. You
Well,
go
I
in
think there's such
before.
a stigma attached to it. And I think
Uh-huh.
that stigma is always attached to hindsight. Hindsight is an illusion. It's having information today and trying to use that information to change the past.
Uh-huh.
We can't change the past, regardless of how much information we have today. And I think it's, on both sides. I think it's a lot to do with confidence because we sometimes feel much more confident, much more valued when other people are validating our decisions or validating who we are. And I think if you're relying on that outside validation to feel good about yourself, equally, that outside validation is going to be as cold and harsh when it's destroying you, when it's saying you were like, how could you do that? So I think, hindsight is a big part of that. And I think the second part of that is the stigma, the idea of who's to blame here. And I think, we are in times where we're starting to maybe change our consciousness around that, but a lot of blame has always been put on the victim. Well, you can't do anything about the person doing that stuff. That's just the way they are, but you can do something about yourself. So I think it's somewhat changing. There's more conversations about sort of it's not just the fault of the victim. Perhaps it's the fault of somebody else, and we actually need to deal with that person that's going around and hurting other people. But I think we need to talk about the stigma that's related to making bad decisions, the stigma that's related to rape, suicide, all of these things that we think is so awful that when we hear somebody doing it, we immediately paint them as damaged goods or there's something wrong with them.
Yes. And if we start sharing our stories, we realize that we're not alone. We realize, you tell the story of being scammed, and everyone else starts chiming in about how it happened to them too. Different story, different amount of money lost, but
It's
whatever.
unique to everybody.
Yeah, but the shared issue is I was duped, and I feel, and my advice is tell the story as often as you need to get a circle of sympathetic friends, and then stop telling the story. You got to move on. You got the past. People say, well, you got to go to the police. Well, this guy said he went to the police, the FBI, he went to a
They,
congressman. Nothing
they
happened
can't
in
do
result.
anything.
And if you spend money on attorneys you know, and make all your time is spent trying to track down who did this, you're going to be miserable, and you're losing those moments in life
You,
that in
you're
which you
but
could be
you're also
happy.
perpetuating the story.
Yes,
Like there is a line here where, you have to ask for justice. I think you do have to do your part for justice as long as it feels comfortable to you. But first, you have to take care of yourself, and first, you have to do what's necessary for you to get back into life. And I think, it is wonderful to talk about justice and from the perspective of police and the legal system. The legal system as it stands right now is very much about protecting the offender.
It is.
Lots of people say, well, if people just reported their crimes more and more, that would change. No, that's not how it changes. What actually changes is people holding the offender responsible, meaning family members hold that person responsible. Everybody knows who the scammer is. Everybody
No.
knows who the rape in the family. Everybody
It,
knows.
well, maybe in the
Everybody knows
family.
that's just Uncle Jim. That's what he does. It's not serious.
Right, right. It's all situational, right? You give the example of somebody in the family doing something horrible, which happens. I have a friend whose uncle took her out on the boat through most of her childhood and insisted on oral sex. She's only 11, you
Mm-hmm.
know, but she grows up with shame
And it's
that he's the ass who did it.
and I
And
think
we're
being coming from a family and being now choosing to be open to what's actually happening in the family, in the community. There's always people that have really strong suspicions or people that know and don't say anything. They're just like, oh, that's him. It's not that big a deal. Or
hmm
that's just the way he is. Whether
hmm
it's people that are abusing physically, verbally, scamming, raping, or even just being racist, the family knows it, the family allows it and lets it go because they'd rather just let that person be than actually create and sit in sort of the stigma of this is happening to our family.
Yeah.
I do
That's
believe that if we held the family unit responsible and the actual offenders responsible from that perspective,
yeah.
then we would start seeing a change in the legal system, a change in sort of the justice system. With that too comes, the addressing of the stigma. Like, and I understand that people would rather hide it and be ignorant about something than address the shame of stigma. Nobody
Yeah.
wants, like, families don't want to be the family that Uncle Jim just scammed 100 people out of $100 billion.
Yeah.
They would rather be like, oh, that wasn't really true. He would never do that. Meanwhile,
Yeah.
he tried to scam them a couple times and he got away with it. And they're just like, oh, that's just what he does.
Yeah. And it's all situational. When I'm talking, this guy it wasn't a family person who did it. It was somebody he met online. And when you're older and gay, and because you live in a community that emphasizes youth and beauty and sex, uh, and you're alone, and either your spouse has died or you've never had one, and you are so eager to feel like someone loves you that you take ridiculous chances, and you end up losing. And you didn't do something wrong. A lot of people meet online, and a lot of people successfully create relationships online, and so you go into it hoping that that's the same thing,
And
but it's
I know we're speaking about your friend was in this community, but it's not just sort of gay. It happens to everybody on every age group. It has more to do with that fear of loneliness and that desperation for worthiness, like somebody choosing you, somebody saying you're special enough. And I think it happens in business. A lot of entrepreneurs lose a lot of money because, somebody will come to them and say, I've got the magic bullet for you. And they lose their entire business that way.
yeah,
There's a lot of
yeah,
young people that are also in the dating who get scammed from this person told me that they love me, but meanwhile they were dating 10 other people.
right,
So I think it's multi-generational, it's multicultural. It has more to do with that human condition of being chosen and validation.
yes. And the loneliness is what generates it.
Yeah,
Even when you're talking about a high school girl, with this boy, she wants to be like everybody else who has somebody, and she wants to be kissed, and she wants to be hugged, and she wants to be told she's special. And she gets it, but she gets it from somebody who's telling lots of other people the same thing. You
yeah.
know, so let's go back to shame. And how long do we carry shame? How do we get rid of shame, and how long do we carry it?
I think we have to be really realistic here. We carry it for a long time, and it's really hard to let go of shame. I think it takes an enormous amount of dedication and discipline to let go of shame.
Shame and embarrassment. The
Shame,
other,
embarrassment, and the resentment that goes with it. I think it takes an enormous amount of work and effort. And I think my understanding and the way that I work with shame is very much you have to reach a point of enough. I've had enough. It's too heavy to carry. I can't continue this way. We have to reach that point of enough first.
yes,
And
we ask our friends not to ask questions about what happened because we've told the story so many times, and it brings up
enough.
feelings every time we tell the story, and so we'd prefer not. It's over
Yeah.
with. It's done.
And then I think once you hit your like line of enough, then it's a matter of retraining your brain. You have to retrain your mind that every time you think about it, you have to guide your mind and say, like, we're not doing that anymore. We're thinking about this instead. Rather than worrying about all of the money we've lost, we're now going to start looking for opportunities to receive more money or opportunities to really enjoy the money that we have now.
Yes, how to live more simply.
Yeah, and I think that's really hard to do. Like from a human real life perspective, it takes a lot of effort to meet your mind with the stories and to meet it with we're not doing that anymore, choose something different.
Uh-huh.
In my experience, as I train my mind, sometimes I have to do that like what it feels like 10,000 times a day.
Um,
But I do it because I know that there's value on the other side of it. And also, I've had enough of carrying.
and there's a dichotomy comes up too for the individual, at least in my experience, Haley, and that is that you want everybody to hate the person who did this to you. And at the same time, you want to let go of them with love and send them on and hope they have a happy life. Which is it? Which is it that you want? Do you want the whole world to know whose their real name is, and then shun them? Or do you want to let go of that and say, I wish it hadn't happened. I own my part in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I should have been more aware of what was going on. It's my codependency maybe that was part of what was going on, but I got to let go of you. And I got to let
And
go
the
of you
story.
with love and the story. And the story is my story. Their story would be very different.
Mm-hmm.
If they sat together on this program, they would say, "Well, wait a second, that's not what happened."
Yeah.
And so then you have, an impasse. And so, it's the story you tell yourself, but it's also the story you let go of.
And I think in my experience too, you have to reach that point of enough that allows you to be open to letting the whole story go and all the people attached and actually not holding on the resentment of what you perceive other people did to you. I found in my life one of my greatest tools for letting go of resentment is leaving it up to karma. I'm a
Mm,
strong believer in karma. I've experienced karma for stuff I've done, and I know karma comes around. It's a universal law of physics. For every action, there is a reaction. That's God's job. It's not my job.
mhm.
So I very much, when I've hit that point of enough, I very much just be like, I'm leaving it up to karma now. I'm leaving it up to things that are much greater to me. I'm now going to focus on what I can control, what I can do about this. And that helps me a lot.
Karma really is, you talked about God, and some people will say, I don't believe, that God's involved in anything.
Well, then you can just believe in the law of physics.
Well, exactly. It can basically be that if I'm a rotten person, I'm going to experience that in my life.
Mhm.
I'm going to have fewer friends. I'm not going to laugh as much. I'm going to be more afraid of people. And I'm going to walk around feeling guilty and shameful.
I'm full of
I mean,
fear.
now you can say, I don't feel any shame. Well, I think you do. And
Yeah,
I think when you die, you're sort of aware that you're not the person you had hoped to be.
I agree with that. And I think, with the event, the shame and the stigma of these things not only are with the victim, they're also with the offender. So the offender isn't going to tell their side of or like tell the actual truth because of the stigma attached to it.
Yeah,
Live
they
with
don't
that.
want to come out.
They know that what
Yeah,
they did carries a stigma, and if anybody knew the real truth,
yeah.
it would reflect badly on them. So they either keep quiet about it or they will perpetuate a lie about it because they know. And, I'm no saint. There's a devil in me, there's a devil in you too. I know what that feels like, to
Hmm.
be entirely honest. I can't
Hmm.
live with it, so I don't do it. I can't imagine how awful it must feel every single day that you have to do that every single day.
Keep the lie.
Keep the lie going and keep building on the lie because you're trying to hold that feel, like control that feeling of it doesn't feel good.
And then at some point you realize that you're not who you think you are, and nobody knows who you are, and you really don't know who you are because you've lost touch with it.
And I do think, not only does it feel ick, you don't look good.
Hmm.
If you look at people that are making questionable decisions that are not benefiting the majority of people, they don't look good. They don't look
Hmm.
healthy. They don't, they're either really, really skinny or they're really, really overweight. They have health problems. There's a lot going on with them that you would just be like, you don't look good. Whereas if you
Yeah.
look at somebody that is really trying to live an honest life and really trying to be inclusive, they look very different to a person that's carrying all of that shame, all of that guilt, all of that fear.
And be careful who you choose to be around. Because if you choose to be around the person, who is harming others, it's going to impact you.
It's going to impact you. And I think that's my point. I've never seen a happy family that is sheltering the offender
Hmm. Or the big secret.
or the big secret.
Hmm.
There isn't one person in that family that escapes it. The only person that escapes it is the black sheep.
Hmm.
And that person had to make a choice. They hit their point of enough, I can't do this anymore. And they decided to say something. And more often than not, they're then the black sheep. Because
Well,
then it goes back to that point where people would, where we are with society right now, most people would rather shelter the secret because they're afraid of the stigma. If that secret got out, they would rather shelter that and be like, oh, now look what's happening to that person and sort of hold them in the victim.
Hayley, when you and I started this discussion before we turned on record, and I asked you what you wanted to talk about today, you mentioned identity.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about that and how maybe some of this fits into it?
I think it fits in perfectly because identity is something that I've been sort of welling around, marinating in my head, and really trying to figure out how to articulate it best for the way that I see it. So I tend to kind of sit with it, write a little bit, come back, write a little bit more. And it's really been trying to articulate, I guess is the best word, how our identity shapes our life. And I think it's, from an identity perspective, when we're young and we're children, we're kind of given an identity. You're white, you're Catholic, you're a man. you wear these colors. We're given those identities. And then later on, we sort of have the option of choosing what our identity is. And our life directly reflects that identity. And so when we're talking about identity in relation to what we're speaking about today, when we have been scammed or we've experienced sort of perceived destruction by another person, our identity is shaped based on our perception of that event, based on our perception of what other people think about it, and how we should move forward with it. Some people's identity is, I've been scammed.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah.
They start with that on every conversation. Hi, my name's Jill, and I've been scammed.
Hmm.
Believe what happened to me.
Uh-huh. There are some topics that men don't really have a right to talk about comfortably in terms of what has happened to women, uh, sexual violence. But the same is true for the woman who has been abused, I think, is that, I'm Jill and I was raped. I mean, that's not who they are. It happened to them, but it's not who they are. They carry the scars of it, but they're much more than that.
I agree with you on that point that we are not what's happened to us, we are who we choose to be.
Hmm.
There are many people that will disagree with that and actually get angry that we're not saying, like, in saying that we're not what happened to us, we are who we choose to be, that we are diminishing the event.
Uh-huh.
I think my belief is then you're holding the stigma, you're holding the shame, you're holding the resentment, and being like, this person's not allowed to leave that. They can't be anything other.
And 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 if that were true, then I'm Brian, I was fired for being gay.
Mm-hmm.
That's not my identity.
No, can you
No,
imagine?
that happened 50 some years ago. Um, it actually has helped me tell a story that impacted people, globally. Uh, but there are certain subjects like, Israel and Palestine and rape and that you just sort of think, you know, there's landmines there, and I just as soon not walk on one when I've got lots of other things to do. That doesn't mean I don't want to learn, and that's when people telling their story helps a whole lot, because then you get an aha
Mm-hmm.
experience. That's happened for me. But you can't also assume that every single Jew and every single Palestinian, every single woman who's been raped is going to tell you the same story. They're not going to tell you, they're not all feeling the same way.
No.
They don't all, tell the story in the same way, or its significance to them may be different than the other person's. So we have to allow for that, walking on eggs because one person took a snipe at us and said, you have no right to talk about this, doesn't mean that everybody feels that way.
I would, we say this word often. It comes down to listening.
Hmm.
Listen to people when they tell their story. If you're going to offer the space for somebody to share their story, listen first. Listen to the words they're using, pay attention to their body language, and read the room. You're not going to, I do this for myself and I recommend to other people too. Like, if somebody is very much in the shame and that's where they are, and their identity is very much the story that they're telling, don't try and change their mind. They're not
Exactly.
ready for it. Don't hit them with your perspective and how they should change. Just be okay with, okay,
Don't solve
okay.
it for them. Yeah, they
Yeah,
don't want it solved. They just want to be listened to.
yeah. And I think, that is sometimes just our job is just to listen as much as we want to solve, as much as we want to help. listening is sufficient.
Uh-huh. Not only sufficient, but necessary. If we
Yeah.
want to help the person in any way, having them know that they've been seen is really important.
Yeah. And, I'll give an example of that. In the work that I do, I tend to work with many women that have had some kind of abuse, whether it's physical or verbal, violence. There's always some part of it where you're just like, how are we living in a world where humans can be this destructive to other humans? And not every single one of those people that comes to me ends up being a client. There's some people that will come to me because they just want somebody to listen to their story over and over and over and over again. And I think we have to allow people the space to be who they are, to be in the moment that they are in. And, there's only help when we're asked to help. Only give an opinion when you're asked, what is your opinion?
Hmm.
Or only tell what you see if there's space.
And thank them for telling you their story.
Yeah. And let them be, it's not what I agree with, but I also understand that, that's where people are at. And I try my best to say, hold you rather than being empathetic and being like carrying the weight of what they've gone through. I always try to be more on the side of compassion, which is, I hear you and I wish the best for you. Whatever the best is that you decide, I wish the best for you.
Because you deserve it.
Yeah, and I do believe that we, all humans, are designed for a happy life. And sometimes it's been shown again and again with the hero's journey. We all have to go through certain things to be able to make very clear decisions. Sometimes we need, the 2x4 across the head, and after that we say, that's enough, I'm not doing this anymore.
Uh-huh.
I don't think I've ever heard a story of somebody on the hero's journey that literally got a cupcake and was like, this is so fantastic, I've had enough. It's always been something really hard,
Well,
something
there's
really
a
difficult.
the journey is about there's a lesson to be learned and you're on your way to learn it.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't mean you don't make several journeys.
Yeah.
But this particular one is about this particular issue, and you're going out to face it. Like the person who really knows that they're attracted to the same gender, but is terrified of acknowledging it to themselves or to anyone else. The hero's
Mm-hmm.
journey for them is to leave their comfort zone
Yeah.
and go out and embrace themselves as good, whole, loving, lovable, right? And then come back and be a new person.
Mm-hmm.
And then another challenge is there where they leave their comfort zone. And, like I'm codependent. Okay, let's go take a look at that one. I have no boundaries. What's that about?
Yeah.
Right? There's
It takes
always,
enormous courage.
Mhm.
It takes enormous courage because, I think we're speaking from a place where I've individually experienced the shame, the resentment. You've experienced it. So we're speaking from own personal experience in our lives. There's also, as people that speak to other people and help other people through it, it takes an enormous amount of courage to say, I've had enough and I want different. I want something different.
And how do we get that message? Why does that dawn on us?
I have no idea
I
when.
think it's because of the mentoring of other people. I think it's like the Harry Met. So I want what she's got.
I think there's some of that too, but in my experience, everybody's line of enough is different.
Yeah. Well,
Everybody's point of change is different. What makes somebody's point of change 1 year versus somebody will be 5 years? I don't know. I don't.
my question is, why are they aware that there is a possibility of change? Why are they aware that there's a better way to live? And that's by, I think, watching other people. Saying, gosh, you have a serenity. that I've never experienced. How did you get it? And so you
I
explain, and then they on their own decide that they want to go for it.
I agree. I think there's seeds that are planted. I think this goes back to a conversation that we have several times, the old soul and the resilience. I think it takes a specific soul experience to do it.
Hmm.
That makes sense. Like there are a lot of people that will talk about it, but not actually do it. And I think, you can have people mentoring people on both sides of it. Only certain people will go forward and do it. Why those people? What are they receiving? What is different about their situation that they end up actually going through the change? I don't know if it's old soul. I don't know if it's an extra dose of resilience. It's just some people get to their line of enough and actually change, and some people just keep talking about it.
I think a lot of it, for at least for me, Haley, is asking the question for a long, long time. Uh, who is it that I want to be? Who's the
Mm-hmm.
person I want to be? I don't want to get stuck in a crowd. I was never one who uh, made decisions based upon what the crowd wanted from me. I mean, I hid, as a frightened kid who thought his sexual attractions were going to, you know, make him very unpopular. Uh, but I, I, I looked for people to admire, and I was really influenced by characters in books like Siddhartha,
Mm-hmm.
uh, or authors, who uh, Francis of Assisi, stories like that. I was really influenced by those because they gave me an idea of how differently I could live, you know, if I just kept at it. And then asking, what are the ingredients of that? Francis gave away all of his clothes. He was a rich man who gave away all of his clothes and lived in just a raggedy top, uh, tunic. Uh, do I need to do that?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what's going to bring me awareness or a relationship to God? Do I need to live in a cave? No, I don't really. There are caves and there are caves. My two apartments that I lived in after coming out were rat and cockroach infested. I mean, they were horrible in inner city living. But so that was my cave. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't think about it at the time. I didn't take pride in the fact that I had rats in my apartment. But the reality was is that it ultimately was less important to me because I had a comfortable home with my parents if I wanted to give it all
Yeah.
up and go back, ask for forgiveness and, take my old room. Uh, so it wasn't really where I was living. It was more about who who am I and who do I want to become? You know,
And I think that heart desire or that soul desire creates an opening. And I don't know why you were open to it from an early age to kind of be open to receiving these seeds of different teachers. And, the same for me. Like I was very, very early on, I was influenced by Buddhism. Who introduced me to Buddhism? I can't tell you. I was living in Zimbabwe.
hmm.
Didn't have internet like we have today.
Yeah,
We had two TV channels.
yeah.
Where did I get the idea that Buddhism, like, why don't you read about the Dalai Lama, or why don't you look into Buddhism, and why is Dharma such an important word? I
Hmm.
don't know where that came from, but it was just something that was really strong on me. Like, read about this, get your hands on these kinds of things. And these things came to me. So I think, the soul path is very important. It's a very important consideration in when is enough enough? How much shame is enough before you decide I can let go of this?
Hmm. And how long can you sit with it? You
Yeah.
know, the- uh, 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 one of the messages you get from the Tao Te Ching and the Wu Wei is to don't try to change the world.
Hmm.
The world is fine the way it is. Quit trying to choose between right and wrong. Don't be influenced by what people think, right? You are perfect exactly the way you are. Now sit with that, right?
And that's very much another topic that I'm actually considering right now is how simultaneous life is. And you explained that perfectly, how we can't just be on good, we can't just be on bad. We have to find and live a life that is simultaneously happening on the good and the bad, and the love and the hate, and the have and the have not. We can't change that, but we can decide how we exist within it.
Yes, and we also take a look at where are our judgments coming that one thing is good and one thing is bad.
And that's
Are
the
we,
identity.
yeah, are we following other people?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, do we hope for their approval? Or can we ever get to the point, and I'm not saying it's easy, and I'm not there yet. Every time I read one of the passages, I think, what? You know, how am I supposed to get to the point where there's no difference between right and wrong? I don't get that. Uh, but I think ultimately what it's saying is if you go back and back and back before we started naming things, that's a robin. That's a crow. Oh, crows we don't like. Robins we do like. They're just birds. They're two birds, right? That we've given names to and that we've picked up reputations about. And
Stories.
and suddenly naming is the end of all individuality,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's the end of awareness, and it's the end of appreciation.
And
Seriously.
curiosity.
Absolutely. So if you can get back, and this is the tough part, where you are uh, uh, aware, you know, like you're watching a parade go by, and you're aware. You don't have to be in the parade. You don't have to judge the parade. You're just observing it, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that's ultimately where you hope to let go because then you don't judge other people. You're not making judgments right and
Right.
left.
You're more
Uh,
the
um,
discerning.
yeah, and I'm not going to judge that. I don't know it, you know. All I can do is try to guide myself to the point where I'm not telling you you're right and that he's wrong, right?
Florence Scovel Shinn has a wonderful quote, which is, I look with wonder at that which is before me. And I use that often just to, live in between the paradox. It's not for me to judge, oh, this is good, this is bad, this will look good, this won't look bad. It's just to look at everything with wonder, the curiosity of, can that be beautiful? Is that beautiful? And let it go and immediately move on to the next thing. And I think, sometimes that's perceived as being flighty. You're always on the fence, or you're never really making a decision on where you're at.
Right.
And, I was sitting with that the other day too. They can be, living within the paradox, they can be the flighty that is really unresponsible and, nobody really knows whether they're coming or going with you. But there's also the flighty where you allow the moment to be and then you're on to the next moment.
And at this time in my history, because there are, millions of years before me, and there will be millions after me. So I'm just a little teeny speck in this story. But at this particular point in human history, it's very difficult not to be in judgment. We have a president who is destroying the country. I know you don't like to use such broad things, but every single department, CIA, anyway, blah, blah, blah. There are people who get upset with us by saying, what are you saying there's no right and there's no wrong? Of course there's a wrong. He's wrong. Look what he's doing, right? And you say, yes, I know what you're saying. I hate him. You know, I hate everything he's doing. I hate the people he appoints. I hate the Supreme Court. But then you go back to, well, wait a second, what difference between right and wrong? And it makes you crazy because you want to participate in the life that surrounds you, you know, I haven't met a person yet who's not depressed about what's going on. Not one. And I say, you know what? I get it, but I don't go there because I can't change anything except with my vote. And so I don't allow myself to spin my wheels too much about it. I read, but I want to be the person who follows the guidance of the sage throughout history, you know, who has discerned um, the best way to enlightenment.
Mhm.
That's what I want, but it's real hard,
I
you know.
think it's, going back to what you were saying, like we're just this tiny speck in the context of the world where you and I have this conversation. Does that really change the trajectory of the world? It may not change the trajectory of the world, but it's changing the trajectory of our worlds. Our
Yes,
conversation today is changing, like just 1 hour speaking changes the entire trajectory of my existence and your existence. So we make an
yeah.
enormous change that way. I think when we're looking at living in between the paradox and being in the simultaneous moment of like, this is really bad, but actually I'm okay. I think where we can get really caught up in the resentment and the shame of it is when we resist it.
When we what, hon?
When we
Resist,
resist, when we
resist
resist
it.
that we exist in a paradox. It's again a law of physics. There's all
Uh-huh.
opposites occurring at the same time.
Yeah.
We have the freedom as individuals, as humans, to choose where we're going to be on that. And I think that's where the judgment for the versus the discernment comes in. We can judge it and be like, oh my God, this is terrible, and these people are terrible. They don't deserve to be alive. Or we can simply say, that doesn't feel good to me to be a part of that. So I'm going to go over here where I feel better, where I feel more at peace, and I can really manage my trajectory. That to me is more of the discernment, more of the accepting the paradox, not being ignorant and being like, oh, this isn't going on. Just really being more in a place of, I exist in the opposites. Where do I want to anchor?
Yes. Where do I want to anchor? And that's still a tough one.
It's still a
Haley,
tough one. It's still a
what
tough one.
when we talk about Francis of Assisi, who happens to be a favorite of both yours and mine, Francis was not without judgment. He went to Rome and knelt in front of Pope Innocent and said, the church is in the wrong direction. I want to embrace poverty. And that was a confrontation with the Pope in terms of where's the church's focus. Jesus did not agree with the Sanhedrin. He did not agree with the other Jewish leaders, and his message, but nor with the Roman leaders, but he didn't spend his life condemning
Condemning. I
others.
think for me, that's the difference between judgment and discernment.
Yeah.
What the example that you're giving me in both St. Francis of Assisi and Jesus is that they discerned. This is
Hmm.
what makes me happy. This isn't what makes me feel peaceful and free. So I'm going to go a different way. And
Yes.
I'm going to focus on what I can do versus I'm going to judge this and say it's terrible. And now I'm just going to fight, fight, fight.
Right. I want my followers to follow me
Yeah. And
and
I want
and
them
hate
to
these
choose
people.
my way because
Yeah.
my way is the right way. For me, discernment is saying there are many different ways. My way may not be right for you, but I'm going on my way and I allow you to be on your way.
Yes. And my job is not to stop you
Yeah.
from going your way.
Yeah. And again, I think there too, you know, I'm a very big believer in Hermetic principles, which have now been called the laws of the universe or the laws of physics. And one of the laws of physics is the law of opposites, law of paradoxes, that, you know, there's hot, there's cold or duality. At some point, hot becomes so hot that it feels cold. And at some point, cold becomes so cold that it feels hot. It's the same law that says at some point you're so left that you're right, and at some point you're so right that you're left. That's the law of paradoxes. But there is the law of cause and effect. For every action, there is a reaction.
Uh-huh.
I think that's where you have to ask the question, who am I? Why am I? Who am I going
Hmm.
to be? What is my identity? so that you're working with that cause and effect and you're, logically sitting there going, if I exclude a bunch of people and now get a bunch of people against that, what is the reaction of that going to be on me personally? At some point, there's going to be enough people that are angry and say, this is not cool, that they're now going to come after me. That's not going to feel good. So I think it's, allowing ourselves to live within these paradoxes, within these laws, and to really choose on where we're going to anchor and do our best every single day to be authentic to that anchor. And that takes work, like we were speaking about. It takes, having your morning rituals where you ground into this is who my intention for today, this is who I want.
Yes. Yeah.
And continuing through the day to come back to that intention. Oh my God, I just snapped at somebody because my mind was somewhere else.
Exactly.
Present. Perhaps I need to apologize and be like, sorry, that's not really who I want to be. Let me show you who I really am.
Yes. Yes.
That's the hard work is taking responsibility for who you say you are.
And every day it's a high wire act.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like you're sitting in a comfortable chair guiding yourself till the end of your life. Every day you're on the high wire making decisions and being blown by influences, the morning news, the TV program, the soap opera you're watching, whatever.
Your telephone is a landmine of epic proportions.
Absolutely. And so I think getting to the point where you want to be with enlightenment and awareness, and those are real things. Awareness is a real thing, and enlightenment is a real thing, and they're not the same.
No,
You know, uh, it takes a lifetime of work, and there is no point that you coast.
no, I think I say in every breath, in every heartbeat, in every cell, in every moment. That's
Yes.
what it takes. In every breath, in every heartbeat, in every cell, in every moment, I'm choosing to be open. I'm choosing to be peace. I'm choosing to be love.
And so part of the part of enlightenment is that you are perfect the way you are at this moment,
Mm-hmm.
and that there's
And
not a book
enjoying it.
you don't need to read Brian's book in order to feel enlightened, or you
No,
don't need to read Pima Chodron, or you don't need to. I mean, they helped me, you
they're
know,
wonderful reads,
Thich
but they're
Nhat
not going
and
to do it
Pima.
for you.
No, they can't. They can give you ideas, but the idea is just sitting there in your head. You have to put it in action
Mm-hmm.
and see if it's right for you, if it works for you, right? So, and then it brings you to awareness, which for me is being conscious to the moment that you're doing exactly what you should be doing, and love and be grateful for the heaven you live in.
Yeah, and I think that's really important too for me. For the Lord's Prayer is not something that we hope when we die. It's in
Uh-huh.
every moment. Heaven on earth is in every moment.
Yeah.
And we're
Fun,
responsible for creating it.
and funny you bring that up, and I know we can't talk about this a long time, but in the Lord's Prayer, when Jesus was asked, teach us how to pray, he said, Our Father, not my Father,
Mm-mm.
who art in heaven, our Father, who art in heaven, which for me reinforces the whole concept that Jesus was fully man and he wanted all of us to experience them ourselves in on the same exact level that it's our Father, not his
Mm-hmm.
Father.
And there's
Does
no
that?
judgment in the hour.
No, none. And it's not saying ours, but not yours. It's
Right.
just saying, it's just saying that it's not only Jesus's.
Yeah. It's inclusive.
Whatever's, and I know the words are symbolic, we went through a period of why aren't we saying our mother, you know, Yeah, right? And so whatever words you use, uh, the whole point is you have a relationship that you hope to perfect, right? in which you really feel like, I got it.
And I think you have to, coming back to all of this, in my experience, you can't have that enlightenment, that awareness, that peace if you are choosing to carry shame, if you were choosing to perpetuate shame in
I agree.
whatever form.
I agree with you. And shame is not you did nothing wrong, you
And,
know,
that's where you are choosing to anchor over there, which is further from peace. It's not
and
that
it's a,
peace is unattainable, it's just you're taking a left when peace is at the right.
yes, it's a perfectly normal emotional response to the situation.
Yeah.
You're not bad for having the feelings that you have, but taking advice from others who have been through it, if you want to live a happy life, fulfilling life, don't stay stuck in your
Um,
shame or embarrassment.
the shame, the resentment, I mean, even the anger and the grief, they're not emotions for us to stay in. They're signal emotions. They're emotions for us to say, this is telling you that there's something wrong with the situation.
Yeah, and I did nothing wrong.
Yeah. And it's for
I
you.
might I might make a different choice next time,
Yeah.
but I did the best I
Best I
could with
could.
what I had.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
hindsight can't change that.
Yep.
The information that you have today is not going to change what you did 5 seconds ago,
No,
let alone
no.
4 years ago or 5 nights ago.
And love yourself enough to embrace your entire life
Mm-hmm.
and your entire person right now, your entire heart, your consciousness, embrace it as good. And don't look in the rear view mirror.
Nope.
Look straight ahead.
Straight ahead. And it's an open road,
Yeah,
paved in love and light. I think that's a lovely message to end upon today, Brian. Well done.
me too.
Perfect
Thank
timing.
you. Hear the dog? The dog is welcoming Ray home, I think. Any rate, love. It was just
It's a sun.
always wonderful talking with you,
It
Haley.
is.
I
I
love it.
love, love, love. And we will see each other in 2 weeks.
Yes, we will.
Look
And
forward to it.
I'll be posting a couple of our conversations between
Yeah.
now and then. Yep.
Fabulous. We'll talk
Good.
soon. Lots of love.
Bye,
Bye.
hon. Bye bye.